Hello, my name is Kelly McDermott and I work with KLC Consulting. KLC Consulting was founded in 2002 and brings over 2 decades of experience and the expertise of a C3PAO to the table. Our mission is to demystify CMMC, assist you in understanding its requirements, and work collaboratively to achieve certification quickly and efficiently. I'm excited to introduce Kyle Lai, our President and Chief Security Officer. With over 25 years in cybersecurity as a leading expert in CMMC compliance, a certified CMMC assessor, and a key player in the C3PAO community, Kyle is uniquely qualified to guide you through the CMMC certification process. Let's dive in. Hi, Kyle.
Hey, Kelly, how are you?
Doing great. Thank you for leading us in this important conversation about CMMC Level 2 that seems to be coming at us at a much faster clip than we thought. So let's get into it. When exactly can we expect the final CMMC rule to drop, and what does that mean for DoD contractors?
Yeah, DoD now has submitted the CMMC 2.0 final rule to the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs, OIRA review. So CMMC, if everything goes as expected, we are expecting the CMMC rule to be finalized somewhere around the Q4, the later part of 2024, or the Q1, the first 3 months, by March of 2025. We don't know exactly what date that's going to be yet, but that's at least our expectation. Some people say we will try to get the Congress review by the end of the congressional session. So that will be by the end of the year. So that's kind of our expectation, probably by the end of the year. DoD contractors should expect to see the CMMC requirements in the DoD contracts, when the CMMC rule is finalized. The defense contractors also must meet the CMMC assessment and the certification requirements by the contract award date, right? When the CMMC is required in the contracts, that is something that pay attention to. And this applies to Prime and the subcontractors as well, right? Both Prime and the subcontractors, they have the responsibility to ensure their subcontractors also meet the CMMC requirements by the contract award dates. DoD, they have 4 phases. They have a rollout date of 4 phases. Phase 1, that means the first 6 months. DoD expects to see the level 1 and the level 2 self-assessment requirements in the contracts, right? And that's immediately after the CMMC rule is finalized.
Okay, so when the rule is finalized, then from that date going forward, they have 6 months.
They have 6 months, yep, or the phase 1. And that's only self-assessment, right? So for phase 2, it's month 7 to month 18. We will expect to see the level 2 certification requirements for the new contracts and only on the new contracts. And month 19 to month 30th, we should expect to see the CMMC Level 2 certification requirements for the existing contracts. Some of the existing contracts, they may get the opportunity to change the requirements. So month 19 to month 30, we'll start seeing these requirements get into those existing contracts or the extension option years. And also we will see the CMMC Level 3 certifications, but that's something that we'll see in the phase 3. In the phase 4, that's after month 30, right? After the month 30, we will see CMMC. There should not be any exceptions. You will see every contract, DoD contracts, have the CMMC requirement at that time.
I got it. Okay, that's super helpful. So it's broken down into 4 different phases and basically goes from a 6-month implementation to a 30-month, and it's divided up across the board that way. So that's really good to know.
Yep.
So Kyle, everyone knows CMMC compliance is coming, as you just laid out, but is there really a shortage of assessors out there? And how will that impact this timeline for getting certified?
Yeah, currently there is a shortage of the CMMC certified assessors and the CMMC third-party assessment organizations. So as we're talking right now, July 2024, there are only 54 authorized C3PAOs at this time, and there may not be more than 200 authorized C3PAO by the end of 2025. Right? So there are going to be less than 200 authorized C3PAO. So as you can do the math, there are about 77,000 DIB companies that require CMMC Level 2 certification, right? But there are going to be, right now, there are only 54 authorized C3PAOs. So I expect there will be a huge demand. There's going to be a mad rush when CMMC the rule is finalized, and when prime contractors, they are requiring subcontractors to get the CMMC certification, right? Because there are only so many C3PAOs in the beginning. So it is important to make sure that you act now, get yourself ready, and sign up with one of the C3PAO, such as KLC Consulting, to get yourself a spot, right? Line yourself up for the CMMC Level 2 Certification Assessment. And as you probably know, KLC Consulting, we do offer the reserve a spot in line for CMMC Level 2 Certification Assessment. So that is something that you can take advantage for.
Right. Yeah, that's really critical because this isn't an if scenario. It's going to happen and everybody needs to get on board now because this process takes time. So why should companies start the process now? I mean, we see this big buildup, and you explained it really well, that it's like a tsunami waiting to happen with only 54 C3PAOs against having to service 77,000 DIBs. That's a lot to handle in a very short amount of time. So with acting now, what do folks need to know about acting now? What should they do?
Right. Imagine that you are a prime contractor, right? And you are bidding on the new DoD contracts. You will want to look for subcontractors. Right now, they are certified under Joint Surveillance Voluntary Assessment, or they are in line and ready to go to be certified when the CMMC rule is finalized, right? So if you're a prime contractor, you will be looking for subcontractors that have the CMMC Level 2 certification as soon as possible. And then it's mandatory for them to get the CMMC Level 2 certification by the contract award date when the CMMC rule is included into the contract. If you're a prime contractor, you'll only select subcontractors that will not put your company at risk of losing contracts, right? So it is very important for the subcontractors to know and the prime contractors to know that if you don't have a CMMC Level 2 certification, you cannot even win the contract. Right? Mm-hmm. So it's very important. So now that's what the prime contractor think. If you are a subcontractor handling CUI and finding, you need to find an authorized C3PAO, like I said before, right, such as KLC Consulting, to sign up for a CMMC Level 2 certification. And you have to act in now because, if you wait, you might be later in line and you may not be able to get your certification assessment in time to be in the teaming arrangement with your primes.
And the nice thing about KLC is that we offer this reserve your spot now. So even if you don't think you're ready now, but you're getting yourselves together and getting yourself ready, it really makes a lot of sense to reserve your spot. And what does that entail? I know that it's a really great offer that we want to make sure people hear about and they understand what's involved in that. So can you explain what the offer is, Kyle?
Yes, absolutely. So we'll guarantee two things. So we'll guarantee that you will first, KLC will reserve a spot for your CMMC Level 2 certification assessment. We'll put you in line and we'll guarantee to hold your spot. So hopefully everything is all good and you're ready. So we'll be conducting the assessments right away, right after the CMMC Level 2 certification assessment. And second, KLC also offer the best price guarantee, providing that we have the same terms and conditions. KLC obviously reserve the right to review the pricing, the structure, but will guarantee the best price.
That's great. Yeah, we want to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples with our best price guarantee. And is there a dollar amount that people need to put down to reserve that spot?
Yes, they'll need to put down some deposits. Right now, they can put down $5,000 deposit with us.
That's great. And it's the best price is guaranteed. So that's really important. So can you break down what CMMC Level 2 actually means? We've heard it talked about, and with it coming so soon, what does it protect and why is it so important? I think that would be really helpful to our listeners.
So let's step back a little bit. Let's talk about what is CUI. CUI is something that CMMC protecting, right? CMMC is protecting CUI, that's controlled unclassified information. And that means sensitive information that is required to be protected by laws, regulations, and government-wide policies. And under CMMC, there are 3 levels. When we're talking about level 2, is the minimum requirements for companies to handle CUI, right? So when CMMC is fully up and running, contracts that handle CUI will require at least CMMC Level 2 certification requirements, right? So DoD will not award these contracts to companies without CMMC Level 2 certification at the time of the contract award. That's basically how is it related to CMMC.
Got it. And so the level 2 is really the baseline. Like you must have that level 2 certification in order to go forward with DoD contracts.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. So along those lines, I've heard of NIST SP 800-171. So how does that fit into this whole framework of CMMC Level 2?
Sure. Yep. So CMMC Level 2 certification is based on NIST 800-171 Revision 2. There is another version, Revision 3, that's a newer version, revision. But CMMC, the current rule and what we're expecting, it will based on NIST 800-171 Revision 2. CMMC Level 2 has 110 controls, or NIST 800-171 has 110 controls, which consist of 320 assessment objectives. DoD NIST 800-171 assessment methodology, which is also called SPRS scoring methodology, right, is used to generate the summary level score, right, SPRS score. And the perfect score is 110. And this is also used in the other DFAR 7012, DFAR 7019, DFAR 7020, all the other DFARs, which is all the NIST, all based on NIST 800-171 as well. CMMC Level 2 requires a company to define what CUI is, describe, how does the CUI flow through your organization, and you have to define the CUI scope and provide the CUI scope diagram. You have to provide your system security plan, your POAM, plan of action and milestone, right? And provide supporting documents, policies, and procedures, and provide the evidence to make sure that the assessors will have a way to assess if your controls are effective. So these are the requirements and why the CMMC is based on the NIST 800-171. It's all based on the protecting the CUI, and these are the controls requirements that's needed.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's really important to take those steps, and obviously KLC Consulting helps with getting you there.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. We'll help you get there, or if we are doing the assessment, then we'll stay on the assessor side. We'll make sure that we will conduct the assessment and tell you if there are some gaps, we'll tell you where the gaps are, but we will not provide the consulting work, just doing the assessment.
Mm-hmm. And Kyle, on that note, just explain a little bit why it is that KLC can only do the assessing versus the certification? Like, what is that? How is that set up? Why is that arrangement like that?
Yeah, there is a very, very, very strict code of ethics from the Cyber AB. Cyber AB is the CMMC accreditation body. So if we are conducting the assessment, we cannot provide the consulting because there is a very clear line. We have to stay independent as an independent third-party assessment organization. So when we are providing a consulting, we cannot do the assessment and vice versa.
That's great. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's important. There's this separation of church and state in order to keep things very fair and very objective and professional. And then we can help on either end of those and find somebody to work with if we're not providing the certification or the assessment. We can do one of the and also help that client along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are the benefits of getting CMMC level certified? Is it really worth the effort? Because I've heard there's a lot that goes into it, as you just laid out all of those steps. What are the benefits?
Yep. There are definitely a lot of work that need to put in. So here are the benefits. So it will increase the opportunity for you or your company to work with DoD or the prime contractors because you can demonstrate that your company's cybersecurity capabilities and also your compliance to CMMC. And most importantly, your capability to handle CUI, right? You will have the credential, you have the certification to market yourself to handle the contracts that involve CUI, whether it's prime or as a sub. Prime contractors, they love to see subs that are ready, that have the certification. So you can definitely market yourself to the prime contractors, forming some teaming agreements with them. So these are the benefits. While there is no guarantee that, hey, once you have the CMMC certification, you're guaranteed to have the DoD contracts, but that actually boosts up your competitive edge when you have that CMMC Level 2 certification. Yeah. And it's recognized that you are committed, demonstrate your commitment to protect the CUI and DoD and the prime contractors. They will love it.
That's great. Yeah, it really separates you from the pack, right? That you've taken that time and effort to get yourself to that level, and it separates you out and makes you stand out. And also it's, gives you that credential that is important about cybersecurity and keeping that secure.
Yep.
So I've heard some crazy things about CMMC, and there's a lot of myths out there. What are the most common misconceptions about CMMC?
Yep. There is also a myths about, if you have any gaps, then you will fail the certification assessment. You will not be able to pass, and which is false because that if you have a few POAM items, if you have a few gaps that are allowed under CMMC, you will still be able to get the conditional certification, providing that you have a score of 88 points or 80% or above, and you will be able to remediate the gaps within 180 days. So if you do not address within 180 days, then you will have to start over.
All right. That's a really good point.
Mm-hmm.
What is the typical journey like from start to finish for a CMMC Level 2 assessment? People conjure up all sorts of images, both good and bad. So how do you make sure it's not going to be a painful process?
Yes, it will be better to have a full understanding, talk to the C3PAO, have a good understanding in terms of what the process looks like. That is going to be very important. Usually there are 4 phases. There is a pre-assessment, making sure that you are ready. There is an actual assessment. That's when C3PAO, they're conducting the assessment. Then there is a results reporting phase. That's when the C3PAOs, they're documenting the results and plan of action and milestone. If you have any gaps, then you will document your gaps into the plan of action and milestone, the POAM. and then you arrange to have a POAM closeout assessment. That's phase 4. The phase 4 is optional. So what's happening in the pre-assessment? In the pre-assessment, that's usually about 6 to 8 weeks before the actual assessment. That C3PAO will conduct an assessment, pre-assessment with you. KLC Consulting, we're an authorized C3PAO. We will ask, what is your CUI, right? Ask for the documentation. What is your CUI? Provide us with your CUI scope diagram, your asset inventory, and your system security plan, SSP. We will review these documents to make sure that information, the amount of information is ready, that you are ready. You have provided enough information in these documents, and you know what you're getting yourself into, right? You have all these documents, and we will be able to assess. We're not going to start any assessment. We just want to make sure that you have sufficient information provided to us that we will be able to conduct the assessment.
So that's the first step. That's the pre-assessment, right?
That is the pre-assessment step. Yep. So pre-assessment step, once we feel, as a C3PAO, once we feel that you are qualified to move on to the actual assessment, then we will schedule the assessment, the dates, the time. We'll provide you an assessment plan. So it will be very, very clearly lay out the schedule for the actual assessment. If we do not feel that you are ready during the pre-assessment phase, we will maybe postpone or cancel the assessment. Depends on the level of information that you provide. During the assessment, we will conduct the initial kickoff, the in brief, to kick off the assessment. Usually, we'll have 5 days of assessment, Monday to Friday. At the end of each day, we are going to give you a briefing, end of the day check-in briefing, to let you know what we have seen during the day. If there are any controls that are trending met or not met, we'll let you know if there are anything that's trending not met. Trending not met, that means that there may be some things that you have to correct. If they're allowed, you will be able to make some corrections. We'll give you some idea in terms of controls, requirements that are trending not met, and you'll have an opportunity to correct some requirements.
During that assessment time, you're able to remediate some of those controls that are...
Only if they are not impacting the actual configuration. If there are some documentation, you're missing some pieces of information in your documentation. If you have typos, you will be able to fix some of these documentation. But you will not be able to allow to change the configurations because once you change the configurations, it will change the actual environment. So that is not allowed. But documentation-wise, there are still some things that you'll be allowed to do. You may ask, right? So as an OSC, as an organization seeking certification, how would I know what to provide to the assessors? So there's a playbook for CMMC assessors that we will provide to the OSC, organization seeking certifications. That will be in plain English. It will explain exactly what kind of documents that you will need to provide to the assessors. Right? There will be very clear description in terms of what we're looking for, what artifacts we're looking for, and if there are some assessment objectives that we need to look at them in the screen share. There will be a list of things. If you do have physical presence, we will go on site to conduct those assessments, usually on the 4th day or the 5th day. And then we will spend a few hours going through the on-site. We'll give you a list of things, a list of assessment objectives that we will review during our on-site assessment as well. So it will be very clearly laid out in this assessment plan and in this playbook for the CMMC assessors.
I like what you said about plain English.
Yes, plain English. That's very important. We have to make sure that the organization seeking certification, they understand what we are looking for.
Right. Because I think that's one of the barriers to entry for some folks is that they don't really understand perhaps the terminology, the language, what it really means, what they're looking for. how they can make adjustments. But it's great that we have this all spelled out in plain English so that you can readily understand it and comprehend it. And it's in a playbook that's available on KLC's website. So you can take a look at it, which is maps it all out in simple language so that it's not as intimidating and it's much more collaborative. Like we're here to help, right? Not to try to
Exactly.
show you how smart we are, what you know or what you don't know. It's really to help. And we have that available, which I think is really great in its simplest terms.
Yep, absolutely. We definitely are here to help, to collaborate. You only see those type of, horrible assessment that have gone wrong and terrible have gone terrible because they are lacking the actual planning and the communication with the C3PAOs. And also there might be some less experienced certification assessors. So yeah, you definitely want to communicate with the C3PAOs. Yeah, talk to them. And during your C3PAO selection process, yeah, make sure that you talk to C3PAOs, understand who will be leading the assessment, right? It's going to be important to understand what is the background. Yeah, if these lead assessors, how much experience do they have for assessing the, conducting the assessments? There are a lot of C3PAOs out there right now, 100 and some assessors right now. Never enough, but there are various background, various assessment experience. So you want to conduct the interview with the C3PAOs and make sure that you understand the assessor's background.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So then what is the next step when we get to results and reporting? What happens next?
Yep. So results and reporting is something that once we end the assessment, we will let you know what is your score, the SPR score. If you have the 110, that means you passed. We'll send you a letter, say you're 110. We'll put the reports together and then send it to the DIPCAC. Then they will update the information to the SPR's system. Right? When the CMMC rule is finalized, they will have an indicator that you already passed the CMMC Level 2 certification. Right? I mean, the results is only between you and the DIPCAC, so DoD. So that's for them to verify and understand that you have got the CMMC Level 2. When we provide the result and reporting to the DoD as a C3PAO, that will be the end of it. We will still work with you if you do have the POAM items. If you do have a POAM items, you can still work with us or as a C3PAO to coordinate with us to conduct the POAM closeout assessment. Right. So if you finish remediation for all the POAM items, you will be able to contact us to do the POAM closeout assessment within 180 days. And once we conducted the closeout assessment, we will be able to convert your conditional certification to a final certification.
And that 180 days is really key there, that it has to be done within those 180 days. And
Yep.
Just to be clear, Kyle, as you said earlier, you need to have achieved an 80%.
80% of the 110, the score, SPR score, 80% of the perfect score, which is 110. So that end out to be 88 points. So to make it simple, you have to have a 88 points or higher. All your POAM items have to be allowed, and you have to get them finished, the remediation finished within 180 days. If you meet all these three conditions, then yes, you will get a conditional certification. Then you pursue to the POAM closeout assessment. At the end of the POAM closeout assessment, if everything goes well, it's successful, then you will be able to get the final CMMC Level 2 certification.
So as a C3PAO, how do you actually go about checking if somebody is meeting all those NIST 800-171 requirements? Because it does seem like a lot to keep track of with all of those things that must be met. How do you go about checking up on those?
Right. KLC Consulting, our assessors, CMMC certified assessors, will conduct assessment based on the CMMC assessment guide against 110 requirements and 320 assessment objectives. Right? So we will expect to see the support documents, policy and procedures, screenshots, configuration settings. There are shared responsibility metrics. Usually it's required to provide if you are using cloud service providers or managed service providers, system security plans and the other policies, procedures, or standards. So what we will do as a C3PAO, we will do the interview with your people, and then we will review your processes, technologies, facilities, and your external service providers, right? So we will conduct the interview with the people responsible for the controls, the requirements. And we will review the policies, procedures, and the documentation to verify that you are actually following your own process, policies, and procedures, right? And we will review the technologies to ensure they are effective and meeting all the technical requirements, for example, FIPS 140-2 encryption mandates. And we will go on site to assess the physical security related controls, the requirements. And if you are using a cloud service providers, then we will expect to see the FedRAMP package and also the shared responsibility metrics to confirm that cloud service providers are actually providing the controls that are meeting the CMMC Level 2 requirements. And if you are using a managed service providers, then we will want to know the shared responsibilities between you and the MSP, the managed service provider. Make sure that controls are being covered between you and the MSP. Right. So there are many things to cover. And as I mentioned earlier, that we do provide the playbook for CMMC assessors as a guide for the OSC organizations seeking certifications, as a guide for you to prepare and what kind of questions, what kind of documents, and what kind of screen share or configuration or policies, procedures, or some kind of a specific policy and procedure or documents that we're looking for.
Well, there is a lot to keep track of, but we do break it down and we make it simple for folks to follow along. And I find what's interesting is that it really is a whole ecosystem that is involved in making sure that everyone who is exposed to that is following along the same guidelines, the MSPs, the CSPs, all of it, to ensure that everybody's following the same procedures to keep things really secure.
Yep.
So then what happens if a company finds some gaps in their security? Can you help them fix those issues?
So when KLC performed the assessment as a C3PAO, the best we can do, we have to stay independent. So the best we can do is that we will tell you what the issues are, but we cannot tell you how to remediate these issues. So because we have to stay independent, as we have discussed earlier, we'll tell you which controls are not met, which requirements are not met, and the reasons why it's not met.
Interesting. It's kind of like a doctor and a surgeon. The doctor's going to tell you what's wrong, but he's not going to perform the surgery necessarily, right? You go to the surgeon to perform that. So there are two different roles and independent, but they work collaboratively in understanding what the situation is.
Yeah, these are all specified in the Cyber AB Code of Ethics, Code of Conduct. So we have to make sure that we are not examining our own work. So that's why there's a separation of consulting organization and the assessment organization.
It keeps the integrity intact.
Absolutely. Yep.
On another note, I've heard horror stories about some of these audits that have gone amok. And how do you ensure that the process is collaborative and not just about finding problems?
Yep. So you normally hear these type of horror stories, as probably we mentioned earlier, just if you have the less experienced assessors. KLC's assessors will have many years of assessment experience. Outside of CMMC, we have conducted several assessments, for example, the Risk Management Framework, RMF, FedRAMP, NIST Cybersecurity Framework, or HIPAA, all the other certification assessments. We have that experience. So when we go into the assessment, we're not really looking into the nitty-gritty and try to find problems. We want to make sure that we are collaborative and the intent of your controls are effective, right? So we want to actually make sure that we have that understanding of how your control work and not to actually find the problems. We'll make sure that we don't get into the rabbit hole of just finding the problems. When we work with a OSC, we collaborate with them. First of all, we will provide the playbook for CMMC assessors, right? So we will help the OSCs prepare for their, help them understand, help them prepare for the documents, for the policies, procedures, for all the documentation that we are looking for. As I mentioned earlier, that playbook spells out the actions and the required documents in plain English, right? So it helps the OSCs to prepare. And once you understand the documents that you need to prepare, I think that provide a lot of understanding, mutual understanding in terms of the expectation. And when you have the horror story like this, is usually because of lack of mutual understanding of the expectation. And we will work very closely with the OSC to understand what we're looking for. And as we are going through what kind of CUI the OSC is handling, and also the CUI scoping flow, the CUI data flow. If we have questions, we'll be asking during the pre-assessment. We will lay out a very clear assessment plan. So if there are any questions from the OSCs, OSCs should just bring up and have the clear discussion with the C3PAOs. So once we have established that clear understanding, there should be less friction, less confusion, and that's when the CMMC assessment will go smoother.
And the one thing that you talked about there was clear communication on both sides.
Yep, absolutely.
Ask questions that you don't know or understand, make sure that you understand them, and then in turn, the C3PAO needs to give answers in plain English, making sure that the OSCs understand as well.
Yep,
so
absolutely.
Communication is really clear. And then you also establish this trust. There's a trust between the two because you are now communicating clearly and effectively and working together to make sure that this is done right. Kyle, I don't want to put you on the spot, but can you share an example of one that did go bad, an audit that went bad, that, looking at it, you could sort of see, yes, there are these, drive-by CMMC in a box kinds of things that typically don't go well because there's more involved. Is there an example that you can share of something that didn't turn out as well because of this and what the outcome was?
When you are going through the assessment, communication, as you mentioned, is very, very important. And also to make sure that everyone that is involved in the control or in the requirements, they are present to answer questions. So if you have MSP, managed service providers that are doing a lot, say 80, 90, 100% of your IT, right? So you want to make sure that managed service providers that are handling your IT, they're answering questions when the C3PAOs, the certification assessors, have those questions. Somebody within the organization seeking certification team will be able to answer, right? OSC team. So there was one, I heard, right, there is one organization during the assessment, the OSC, they rely on the managed service provider, but their service provider cannot provide anyone to be on site or to be participating in those certification. They could not participate in the actual CMMC Level 2 certification assessment. So at that point, all the questions that have been asked, nobody could answer. They probably should have postponed the certification assessment, but they decided to continue. Some of the questions were asked, partial answers were provided, but not the entire full set of answers. So at the end, the OSC actually got a negative like 50 score of negative 50. But that's because of the managed service providers could not provide anyone to be present during the assessment. So there is something that you want to make sure that you arrange well. Make sure that you have all the people present at the assessment. There are also a requirement for you to be able to provide the FedRAMP moderate package, right? So it's during the pre-assessment or in the beginning, you should be reaching out to your cloud service providers to ask for the FedRAMP package. Sometimes it's not easy to get those FedRAMP package, but you have to try to get those FedRAMP package because if you do not have the FedRAMP package, the assessor will not be able to verify the controls, the requirements, if those controls are fully met, right? So you need to make sure that you get the FedRAMP package to provide to the assessor. So if you cannot, then sometimes the assessment might have to be postponed because of this problem. So these are things that you probably want to think ahead and start working ahead of time to make sure that everything could work out smoothly. During the assessment, you also want to make sure your MSP, managed service providers, they are prepared. They are well prepared because there's one assessment that we have gone through. The MSP, they were surprised on how much configuration settings they have to provide during the assessment, and that they were scrambling. It went okay at the end, but I think it could be a lot smoother if the MSP knows what to expect. Something like a C3PAO, like a KLC, what we will do is we'll perform a mock assessment without getting into these consulting, be able to walk through the entire set of controls and let you know if there are anything that met or not met or did not go well, right? So at least you will be able to know what to do better in the real assessment. So when we actually conduct the real assessment, the final real assessment, then the process usually goes a lot smoother. And the MSP usually will know what to expect at that time.
Yeah, exactly. They're brought in and they're prepared. And that was the key to that whole piece, is that preparation is key. And if you need to do a mock assessment, that's a really great way to get prepared so that the real assessment will go smoothly and everybody's brought into that process early on so that you know what the expectations are and you can prepare to meet the real assessment. Well,
right.
It's really good advice. So on the flip side of, the bad stories, can you share a success story that you've helped where a company did get CMMC certified?
Yeah, so I will share a story where we actually help a company prepare for the CMMC certification. So I can share that story as a case study. So the company itself, the OSC, we help them through the Joint Surveillance Voluntary Assessment, the JSVA. The company is a smaller manufacturing company. There are about 60 people. There are about 15 people that are required to touch the CUI, right? But they do have the manufacturing facility, so all the people have to get trained because the CUI does flow to the manufacturing floor, right? So there is only one facility, and everything is on-prem. There is no cloud-based service. Everything is all on-prem, right? So we help the OSC to prepare their policies, procedures. We actually help them review the tools. And also the FIPS 140-2 certification. During the pre-assessment, KLC Consulting, we actually did work with the OSC and also their managed service providers. And we met with the C3PAO and the DIPCAC because it's Joint Surveillance Voluntary Assessment, so DIPCAC was involved. So we walked through the system security plan, the CUI scope diagram, data flow, and the asset inventory. So we determined everything is all good. We got the assessment scheduled. C3PAO actually provided the assessment plan with a very clear schedule. There is a 1 day on-site visit, end up to be only 4 hours. So during the assessment, the C3PAO and the DIPCAC assess the people, they do the interviews, right? And they conduct review the facilities, the setup, the tools, the configurations, the processes. Configuration is a big piece. We have to make sure that we have to know that configuration management, configuration settings, those are very important. So we knew that ahead of time. There are a few things that were not perfect during the assessment, which was, there are some missing piece of documents and typos, but we were able to make the change. But make sure that when we make the change, we have the change management. We document every change into our change management process. So it's all very clear in terms of what's been changed, right? There was no configuration change during the assessment, so we were okay. The C3PAO and the DIPCAC went on site for about 4 hours to conduct the physical security assessment. They've walked through the manufacturing facilities, make sure that the CUI, anything that's printed out, when you are in the manufacturing facilities, you do print out. You do need to print out how to make the parts, right? Some of the information about the parts that you do have to print it out. So they went through that document. How do you protect the documents, physically protect them securely? So at the end, there was some gaps about the backup software that was lacking the FIPS 140-2 certification because they were in the relapse. Right, so they were trying to get the next version of their software, FIPS 140-2 encryption certification, but there were some lapses on the day, which is pretty normal. And the DIPCAC does understand that. So by the end, the score was 106, right? There are a couple of things that we have to document into the POAM, but within 5 months of the joint surveillance voluntary assessment, the OSCs were able to schedule for the POAM closeout with the C3PAO. And at the end, they did close out all the POAM items and get the 110 score of 110. And DIPCAC accepted the 110 and updated the SPR score. So at the end, it was a happy ending, but there are some lessons learned. We feel that if there is a mock assessment being done by a C3PAO, it will be able to get a lot smoother. The OSC did know about the mock assessment, but they did choose to save money and not to go through the mock assessment. At the end, the results was good, but if we actually have a mock assessment, I think the whole process will be able to go a lot smoother. And the configuration management, as I mentioned, we understand is a big part of the management because there was no mock assessment. The MSP, they did struggle in a couple places where they have to pull together the configurations. So it was not as smooth for those incidents. But at the end, it was actually a good ending. The company that we helped get the joint surveillance voluntary assessment, they all passed. They all get their 110. So they will be able to convert their joint surveillance voluntary assessment to a CMMC Level 2 certification assessment when the CMMC is finalized.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great success story. And there was a little hiccup along the way, which turned out well. To your point, though, they also lost out on 5 months of time in trying to remediate some of those issues, right? So had they done the mock assessment, those issues would have been pointed out in advance. They could have not had those 5 months, and they could have been winning contracts in 5 months as opposed to having to remediate to get the 110 score.
Right. There are just a couple of things, but yes, you are right. They will be able to know some of the small things ahead of time. Yes.
Right, exactly. So you did a really good job in helping assess some of their biggest challenges and overcome them. And again, when we talk about these things and working so closely together with clients, in sharing expectations and being very knowledgeable, which obviously you are and the KLC team is, and having that clear communication, it builds credibility and trust, and you're able to work so well together. For somebody who's seeking help out there, what are some of the biggest challenges to overcome? What would you suggest that a contractor look for when they're looking for something, for this process to go as smoothly as possible? What would you
Right.
say?
Yeah. So we have helped, several companies in the manufacturing, the software development industries, pass their CMMC joint surveillance and NIST 800-171 assessment and audits. Right. So usually the biggest problem is that these companies, they usually underestimate the level of efforts required to prepare for the CMMC or NIST 800-171. And they usually think, oh, it's going to be a couple months, right? Part-time. They only assign a part-time person because everybody's busy. So by the end, it's really a 6 to 12-month effort for the smaller company, right? For the larger companies, usually 1 to 2 years of effort. So yeah, and you have to put several people full-time in those cases. So one thing is to make sure that you communicate this requirement. The CMMC is not a small effort. You have to communicate this to the senior management. Make sure you have the senior management buy in. Senior management has to understand, you have to give them a training, give them some education in terms of what is the actual level of effort required. What are the pros and cons? What are the costs and benefits? Right? If this is aligned with the company's future revenue projection, if the company is going to have more DoD contracts in the future, yeah, this is going to be very important, right? And companies should really go for and invest the time and the efforts and get a real budget, not to get a small budget where you're always going to look for additional funding. But make sure you communicate and get the actual funding and also staffing required to support this CMMC program. Because once you actually get the certification, it's going to be ongoing maintenance. Make sure that your environments stay up to date. There are still going to be monthly, weekly, quarterly type of activities that you still need to conduct, right? To make sure that your environment is still compliant with the CMMC. Is what we call the continuous monitoring, continuous compliance. And because the senior management will need to provide the annual affirmation to state that our environment still comply with the CMMC every year, right? The senior management needs to do this every year. So you need to make sure that all the continuous monitoring, all the continuous compliance is effective. So the senior management, they will be able to see, yep, everything is all still working and be able to comfortably sign their name on the SPRS.
Yeah, that's a good
record.
And the thing is, if you want to win those DoD contracts, CMMC Level 2 is not going away. So you have to do it if you want to get those contracts. There's no way around it.
No, yeah, absolutely. And the mock assessment is going to be very important if you want to make sure that your actual assessment goes smoothly. So I highly recommend to have the mock assessment because that really helps for companies that have gone through and conducted the mock assessment.
Yeah, and then you eliminate the surprises, right? You make everything go a lot smoother for a successful outcome. So
Absolutely.
it. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground and really informative, Kyle. CMMC Level 2, again, it's coming faster than you think. It's really right around the corner. And securing your assessment spot, whether it's a mock assessment, it's crucial in getting prepared, like we talked about. So don't wait until it's too late. With 54 C3PAOs and 77,000 DIBs out there, the competition to get certified is going to be great. And, it's no longer crying wolf. This is really happening. And KLC is here to help you along the way for a free consultation. or you can always contact us to get a quote. And we're really committed, as Kyle said earlier, to not bringing you down rabbit holes that you don't need to go down, but to really help you navigate the CMMC landscape and achieve certification, achieve the end goal, keeping our eye on the end prize. So Kyle, I wanted to thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your insights. Your knowledge is really amazing. And with your leadership and KLC's team, their dedication in making a real difference is helping the defense industrial base, which is helping everybody in this space. So thank you, Kyle, very much for your time and sharing your fountain of knowledge with everybody. And thank you, viewers, for watching us today. Stay tuned for more CMMC updates and best practices videos. In the meantime, feel free to reach out to us at KLC anytime with questions that you may have. So thank you.
Right. Thank you, Kelly.